Hello and welcome to the 2021 French GP strategy analysis video for AlphaTauri. Today we'll be looking at a comparison of the strategy for the two drivers, position movements throughout the race, and race pace as well. Let's get started. So quick look at the strategy comparison. So both on very similar strategies here, only difference being Gasly lasting a little bit longer on that first set, whereas Tsunoda had to pit relatively early. Personally, a bit surprised that Tsunoda started on the medium tire here compared to the hard tire. But I assume that's because they wanted him to get a few overtakes done early in that stint. And importantly for Gasly, undercut here by Ricciardo, as well as Leclerc. Not that Leclerc ended up being an issue, but that undercut by Ricciardo ended up being quite pivotal in the end, as we saw Gasly come quite close to overtaking Ricciardo, but couldn't quite get it done, even with DRS towards those last few laps. So let's have a look how they moved through the race. So Gasly starting in 6th, and then after that pit stop moving down, but moving up through the order again as others made pit stops, and then ended up in 7th, which reasonably good result. I think definitely great qualifying performance by Gasly, but I think the McLarens were clearly quicker over the whole weekend, so I think they probably did deserve to be 5th and 6th with Gasly in 7th, which is a great result. Tsunoda in comparison obviously had that issue in qualifying, so started from the pit lane, ended up 16th in that first stint before he pitted, but pitted relatively early, and then made his way up through the order. But I think that early pit stop kind of really affected his tyres towards the end. He didn't quite have that pace to fight for 10th and 9th with Vettel and Stroll. So let's dig in and have a look at that race pace. So here we go. Gasly led Tsunoda for the entire race. And even that first stint, he was already 12.5 seconds up on Tsunoda before Tsunoda pitted. So quite a significant lead there, and a lot of that just had to do by the number of drivers between Gasly and Tsunoda. Once both of them pitted, Tsunoda actually had some really good pace initially on that medium tyre, and actually brought that lead down to the gap down to 10 seconds to Gasly. But I just wonder if that was probably a little bit pushing too strongly on those tyres in comparison, because once he reached that point about 10 laps in, Gasly had a consistently quicker pace compared to Tsunoda. Very, very consistent pace, and Gasly, as we saw, came close, but couldn't quite do it on Ricciardo there with DRS at the end. So just wonder whether Tsunoda pushed a little bit too hard there, and as a result, his tyres really did fall off a lot quicker than Gasly's did. So moving into the lap times now with the pit stops in there as well. Gasly definitely a lot quicker those first 7 or 8 laps, but then relatively equal after that, and Gasly was stuck in a little bit of a DRS train during that period. And Tsunoda pit in, and then Gasly soon after, and relatively equal. Initially after those pit stops, as we saw, Tsunoda was a little bit quicker through some of these laps, but then Tsunoda's pace didn't really improve that much during this whole time period, even with the fuel burn off, whereas Gasly, we saw, did actually have that consistent decrease in pace, and last few laps they're a little bit slower as he caught up to Ricciardo, but consistently quite a bit quicker than Tsunoda through those last 10 laps or so. Then taking the pit stops out, just get a bit of a zoom in on that race pace. As you saw, Gasly definitely quicker through this start period, and then right towards the end here, approaching 1.5 seconds on quite a few laps there, so significantly quicker than Tsunoda. Looking at that gap lap by lap here, you can see Gasly, as we saw, quicker at the start there through the pit stop section, relatively equal either side of that, with relatively equal tyres, but as we saw, Tsunoda a little bit quicker through this section, but I think that actually really hurt him back here once those tyres had been used up quite a bit and really started to fall away on him. And looking at the histogram here, so Tsunoda's quicker if it's on this side, Gasly quicker if it's on this side. As you can see, a lot more for Gasly and also a lot more spread out. Just look at how many laps between 1 and 2 seconds. That's quite a few laps there that Gasly was consistently quicker. And that really did have to do with the end of the race rather than the start of the race, when it looks like Tsunoda's tyres had just degraded a little bit more than Gasly's. So there we go. That is the analysis of AlphaTauri for the French GP. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. Any comments, put in the comments, and feel free to check out some of the other videos on the channel. Thank you.